I grew up, I was the kind of guy who was really, really scared of heights. I would go when I was at varsity. Remember, we used to go up to the UB, the National Stadium, and we'd run up the stairs. And every time I go to the top of the stands, it's empty, and I look down and I start getting dizzy, and I get, I get a bit high altitude sick, so to speak. So what happened? 2012, I think it was. A friend of mine was then working for BP, as it was called then, and he called me and said, "Look, there's a meeting happening on a Saturday afternoon. There's these guys who want to go up Kilimanjaro, and let's go hear what they have to say. It might be something that might interest us. They're looking for people to join them." So I just went along. I didn't know what to expect. At that time, I think I was fairly heavy. I think I was carrying quite a bit of weight. So, they were telling us, obviously the first thing you're worried about is whether you can go that high in terms of altitude sickness. Second thing we're worried about is whether one can survive. You start wanting to know what the survival rate is, what the success rate is. And then you also then start worrying about some of the finances in terms of, how you're gonna. We had to fly to obviously to Kenya and then fly into Tanzania. And then we had to do all the logistics. We had to buy all the mountaineering equipment. So it wasn't a particularly budget-friendly expedition. So we said, okay, fine, that's the time to do it. I think we had about 5 or 6 months to prepare for that. Ran a few marathons. I think in the process of that, I ran my first half marathon. The first time in my life I ever went over 10 kilometers was in preparation for this thing. It was quite daunting. So we did the preparations. And then we eventually, were ready. We went up and we went up Kilimanjaro. There were 10 of us, like I say. I think out of the 10 of us, 5 of us were able to peak at Uhuru, which is really the highest point in Africa. And then the other 5 turned back at a place called Gilman's Peak, which is about another 400 or so meters below the 5896 that Kilimanjaro, that Uhuru is. Kilimanjaro is more of a mental experience than it is a physical experience, because there are points when you really, really want to ask yourself what you're doing, and you want to turn back, and the mind has to tell you, look, you have to keep going. You can't come all the way here and not do it. So a lot of these things that really end up, for me, it ended up being experiences of resilience and the development of mental fortitude more than the physical aspect. It's sort of looking out through the window and thinking, my goodness, that's the first hint of reality. You start off in a rainforest, more or less, because when you're at the bottom of the mountain, everything is green, the birds are singing and everything. By the 3rd or 4th day, there's no tree, there's no life. And it's just almost like you're scaling up a desert, because there's nothing green, no sign of life. There's just rocks, and there's no water, there's no toilets. There's a whole lot of things that are not going. And obviously the temperatures are dropping. By the time, I think by the 3rd day or so, we were starting to layer ourselves. The temperatures are sub-zero. And you're spending a lot of time in sub-zero temperatures, something that you're not used to coming out of hot and dusty Botswana. And then the other thing is, obviously, you don't have a lot of air. So you sort of, they use this expression where they say when you climb Mount Kilimanjaro, there's something they say pole pole, where they say slowly. So you have to literally walk as slowly, almost like you're walking in the moon, because any knee jerk, any reactions where you sort of exert yourself too quickly, you'll run out of oxygen so fast you'll never realize what has happened. I think that's where really the preparation from a lung capacity perspective was very, very, very vital. But like I say, that's the time when you are most vulnerable. You don't have any the oxygen is and the air is at its thinnest. So people are stopping, people are cold, people are throwing up, people are getting sick, and all sorts of things. So that's where I think the mind really for most of us had to kick in, because there was 8 of us gentlemen and a couple of ladies. A couple of people there started shouting out for their parents and us calling out for their mothers. And the pain physically was unbearable. You're struggling to breathe. It's extremely cold. It's dark. You don't even know. You can't even see where you're going. And the reason for me, and I remember I remember when finally it got light, I was about 5 or 6 in the morning when I looked around me. And for a person like me, like I told you, I don't do heights very well. And at least at that time I didn't do heights very well. When I looked up when the sun started to come up, at dawn, and I could now start seeing at the bottom, and I'm like, oops, I forgot that I can't take heights. But I was 5'6", maybe 5'4", 5,400, 5,500 meters above sea level, and like, well, there's no turning back. I can't do anything about it. So then the mind had to tell me, listen, I've started this thing, I've got to finish it. And for me, the biggest benefit, more than anything else, is for character development. You'll be surprised how much stronger you come out of these kind of things. Whether you make it to the peak or not, just the experience itself, it just helps you to explore how resilient you are as an individual, and it also to explore the extent to which your mind can challenge your body to do things that you previously might have thought were unimaginable. In my mind, I like to tell these stories because I believe, it's helped me to develop much more as a character, as a person, as a leader, and it's also helped me to appreciate life itself a lot more.